Hello and welcome to the first episode of The Silver Wolf Howl. I am Angela and I will be your host. In this series, we will be discussing our perspective on private investigation, especially from our South African point of view. I am the director and owner of Silver Wolf, a private investigation firm based in Cape Town. Today I'll be covering a little bit about Silver Wolf, who we are and what we do, our most frequently asked questions, some myths about PIs, some of the challenges we face, and also some general information about our industry. I want to start off with our frequently asked questions. And the first one usually comes up in social situations. You know, when you are introducing yourself to someone, they ask what you do for a living. And when I reply that I own a private investigation company, there's usually a raising of eyebrows, wide eyes, and a raise in the pitch of the voice, followed by either, oh, that must be a very interesting business to be in, or really? I thought private investigators only existed on TV and in movies. But I can assure you, we are real and we do exist. And yes, it is a very interesting business to be involved in. No 2 days are ever the same. No 2 cases are ever the same, even if the subject is the same. There are different clients, different perspectives, different information that is required, different evidence that we have to gather, different perpetrators that we have to find as well. So we have to familiarize ourselves with this new individual and their history and what they've done and follow on from those leads. So it's so different and so varied, even if they do fall under the same category. Another frequently asked question that I usually get is, okay, so you're a private investigator, then you must be chasing after cheating spouses all day. And no, we do not run after people with video cameras and record their infidelity. We do not do that at all. But we do some cases like that, where we have to find information for divorce matters or whatever the individual needs. But we limit those cases quite a bit. We are very selective about which ones we do, and we only do 1 or 2 now and then. So that is a very small percentage of what we usually do. That then leads to the next question. Okay, so if you're not chasing after cheating spouses, what do you do all day? And we actually do quite a lot of other things. We often investigate on fraud matters, in that we are often in search of perpetrators of fraudulent activity or evidence to prove fraud in certain instances. And this is where our client generally has been the victim of some kind of fraud and the person in question has made off with lots of their money. And what we are required to do in this instance can differ as well from case to case. Sometimes we just have to get a little bit more information on a case that's already open with the police, but they just have some holes that they need filled, and then the client would hire us to fill those missing pieces of information for them. There are other instances where we have to start from scratch and find the person, find some evidence, and then take it to the police. We also do police liaison in certain instances, not just for our fraud investigations, but for other investigations as well. So we are the go-between between the police and our clients as well. That's another service that we offer. Sometimes we do missing persons investigations. We have worked on a few murder investigations as well. But just as the cheating spouse investigations, these are limited and a small percentage of our investigations in general. We also work on accident investigations. That's also part of our portfolio. We do theft investigations, especially for businesses. And in this, We have done sting operations, and we have been involved in arrests on these kinds of thefts that have occurred in businesses by employees, for example. We do evidence gathering as well on cases for attorneys. So this covers a range of subjects, but it usually involves assisting attorneys with whatever legal matter they are handling at the time. And they may require certain bits of information, or they need to locate witnesses, or they need to verify information that they already do have. So these are a few examples of what we do in evidence gathering or assisting attorneys on their cases. We also track down individuals for collection attorneys and estate late matters. This would involve beneficiaries of wills. So it could be that there's a will and it's been so many years since the beneficiaries have been in contact with the deceased, and so the information that is on the will is very outdated. So attorneys would then ask us to find the person or find their new address, and so that they are able to process the will. Another part of our business is asset investigations, and in this we look into what the individual owns. This is usually for matters where somebody is suing this person and they want to see if it's worth their while to go after them, because legal matters can get quite expensive, and you may be able to process the claim, but at the end of the day, the person that you are after may not be able to pay that money back. And so sometimes clients ask us to check first if there is anything worthwhile, if they will be able to pay these debts back, for example. We also do investigations into business practices or business activities. This is usually where an individual is interested in partnering with another person or another business, for example. So we would look into the business just to make sure that the business is a real business and it is what the person has claimed it to be, and that it is a proper, successful running business, if that is what has been claimed, and just to verify all the information that has been supplied to our client to make sure that it is not just a cover business, and our client then gets involved and maybe invests money or their business or their time and discover that there's nothing there. This kind of thing could also then lead to the fraudulent activity that I was referring to before. So a business can pretend to be legit. A client can get involved with them, and then the business just doesn't respond anymore to their communications, or the owner or the so-called owner just disappears, or whatever the case may be. So it's very important usually for businesses to look into whoever they are wanting to partner with, so that they can avoid being involved in a potential fraud case later on and fraud investigation later on. Another interesting question that I get asked is, were you a policeman, or were you involved with the police in any way, like a detective or something similar to what we do as private investigators? And that is not actually the case all the time, and it's not a prerequisite to becoming a private investigator. I was not involved with the police in any way before becoming a private investigator or before getting into the industry, and my investigators were also not policemen before they joined me. So that is a popular myth or a popular idea that people have, that you have to have been involved with the police in some way in order to get into this industry, and that is not the case at all. I do find that our approach is different because we were not involved with the police or similar entity before becoming private investigators. So we see our investigations from a different perspective, and we can therefore work on it in a different way. So a little bit about Silverwolf. As I mentioned in the intro, we are based in Cape Town, but we do work all over South Africa. Our tracing service expands to international traces even at times. So even although we're based in Cape Town, we can do work in lots of different areas as well. Silverwolf started in 2018, and it was just a tracing agency at the time that used to track individuals for collection attorneys. That's usually for accounts and those kinds of things where people have moved and the attorneys are trying to get in touch with them and they're not finding them at those addresses or on those telephone numbers anymore. So we would get instructions to update that information and get the person involved in contact with the attorneys again. So it started as that tracing agency and it has grown since then. Later on in the series, I will be introducing my investigators and I will be chatting to them about their work and their view on what it's like to be a private investigator. For me, I got into the industry about 20 years ago. I started out in admin and just general assisting with the business side of the private investigation company. And then later on, I started assisting with investigations and stakeouts and processing documents and serving certain documents for attorneys at the time. From there, it expanded as I started doing it almost part-time. I was working on other projects at the same time back then as well. I got more involved with it as the years progressed, and in 2018 I started Silverwolf. We also get asked questions like, is it dangerous? Do you go into dangerous areas? We don't often go into dangerous areas. It would obviously depend on what type of investigation we're working on and if it's essential for us to go into those areas to find the information or the evidence that we need. But I would say in general, we don't. We don't have to go into those areas. So that part of the danger element is not really there. Our job is not really dangerous because of the nature of our investigations, but we can never be naive about it either. So we are always ready for whatever may come up, and so we take precautions in that. But in general, we don't have dangerous situations, or we haven't had any to date. We do get people who are a bit difficult and annoyed that we found them, and they do often have strong words. But dangerous to a degree of life or death is not really part of our business. Also, the question about firearms, if I carry a firearm or my investigators carry firearms, we don't. That does add a different element to the whole investigation. So we try and avoid it because it's not really needed with the type of investigations that we do. We do stakeouts, and we do sometimes have to follow people and find out more information for the particular case we're working on. One of my investigators was asked if he walks around with a trolley pretending to be homeless while we are doing stakeouts. Our stakeouts don't generally involve us having to do that, but it could probably be a possibility. We never know. We have been asked if we are like a spy. I suppose to a degree, but we're not actually spies. Then there are some really funny myths that come up in conversation. Like, for example, do we walk around with a magnifying glass wearing a coat and a hat? No. We don't. I don't even think I own a magnifying glass and a hat. So yes, no, that is not essential to becoming a private investigator. In South Africa, we are registered with the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority, and this entity largely includes security companies, and private investigators fall under this banner, you could say. So often we are mistaken for being security agents, like security officers or security company, and that is not what we do. So we don't do any form of that kind of security, even although we are registered with the same authority that covers security companies. Our job and our days are not what is depicted on TV shows and movies, although that is also another myth that comes up quite often, and a question that we have to answer. Is it like it is in the movies? Does it happen like on TV? It is not as it appears on TV usually. It is still very exciting, but not quite as it appears in movies and on TV. In general, we have a lot of fun. We have a lot that we have to think about all the time, and a lot of background work that we have to do. There's a lot of work in the office, planning of investigations, brainstorming, trying to figure out how we will go about this to achieve whatever goal is requested of us. So it involves a lot of thinking, a lot of background work, a lot of admin and checking and planning before we actually execute any physical work on the road or go out looking for the information that we require or the evidence that we need to find. Overall, it is really fun. It is really fun. And as I said, we will chat with my investigators at some point, and they could give us a little bit of what their days are like. I hope that you've enjoyed this first episode of our series and that I answered some of your questions. If there's anything that I left out, I did try and cover everything, but I may have forgotten some stuff. So if there's anything that I've left out and you are curious about, please do get in contact with us and I will try to answer as many as I can in a future episode. Thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to chatting to you in our next episode.